Hello everybody, this is Pippin from pippinsplugins.com, and today for this video review I want to look at Caldera Forms. This is a free form builder plugin for WordPress built by David Kramer and Josh Pollock. This is a relatively new plugin, but it's one that I've had my eye on for a little while now because ever since it came out, they've just been doing some really great things. They've already gotten up to 49 5-star reviews and only one less than a 5-star. They have quite a few downloads going. It's active on at least 3,000 sites. And all around it just looks really, really good. Most people who have used WordPress have used one of the forms plugins, whichever one it is. And so if this is something that you need to build contact forms or submission forms or survey forms, etc., give Caldera Forms a chance because it's pretty cool. So I went ahead and played with it this morning and was really, really pleased with what I saw. So I want to walk you through it. First of all, it's available at WordPress.org. It's called Caldera Forms. It's free to download and install. And then they also have some paid add-ons that you can purchase from their website, calderawp.com. They have a couple of other commercial plugins that they sell, as well as several other free plugins, and then they have the add-ons. So these are the current add-ons they have available for Caldera. So MailChimp, PayPal, Stripe, etc. All of those are going to be very useful for a lot of people. But out of the box, the free plugin does a lot, and it's really, really cool. So let's go take a look at it. First of all, once it's activated, you're going to have a new section here called Caldera Forms. And when you go here, it's going to show you a grid view of the different forms that you have. It's going to show each of the ones. So right now, I just have one form called Contact Form. And let's just take a look and see what this looks like real quick. Go to Edit. And now here's the UI for creating the forms. Now, one thing that's really cool about this is the exact layout that the form is going to have on the front end of your website. So now we can go over here. I've created this as a 2-page form just for a quick example. Let's preview it to see what it looks like. And here it is. This is on the default 2015 theme. And you can see here's each of the options. I've built 2 columns here. We can fill these out. Give it a rating. Go to the next page, and then go ahead and do that and submit the form. Okay, so that's what it looks like on the front end. Let's go ahead and build a new form so that you can see how it works. Now, one thing that I found that actually tripped me up a little bit at first is that the UI for building a new form is very different than what you might be accustomed to if you've used other form builder plugins. And at first I wasn't sure how I felt about it, but as I used it more and more, I realized that it's actually really, really nice. And sometimes when you look at a UI and it's changed a lot or it's very different than what you're used to, sometimes it's off-putting. But if you step back and then look at it objectively, you can say, well, maybe it's actually a lot better and I'm just used to something that's subpar. So when I was playing with this, I started to try and look at it that way. And once I was done, I think it's really, really good. So if it throws you off at first because it's different, give it a chance because it's pretty cool. All right, let's just call this a survey form. So we'll create a form. And here we go. So now we start here and we have one row. So one of the things with Caldera that's pretty cool is that aside from just being a form builder, they also build the layout of the form. So the individual rows, the columns, etc. And the whole thing is responsive. So when you're building this, if you want to have a form that has multiple rows or columns, you can build it out exactly how you want, and it's going to respond really well in a responsive environment. So the first thing we can do is we can add an element. Now we can add an element by dragging the blue button here onto the grid, or we can click the little plus sign right here to add one to the section. All of the options pop up. So these are your basic options. Then you have buttons, content, feedback, files, all of these different options here. So let's start with some basics. Let's just do a single text field. Set element, and you can see it pops in right here. Our options show up. And if we want at any time, we can change the element type right here. So let's just say your name. Then we can set it to be required. We can give it a description. We can do the other options such as set a CSS class, a placeholder, default values, etc. Show in the entry list. So when we can record entries on this form, and this is going to include this field in that entry. Now we have two other options. Number one is a big delete button right here. And this is one of my one little criticism I think I have of this UI is that the delete button, when I first look at it, to me it looks like a save or something like that because it's blue. So I would prefer to see that as being red or gray or something like that, but that's okay. That's a minor thing. Now we can go over to conditions, and we don't have anything yet because, well, we do, but once we add in more fields, we'll be able to do more with this. So this is basically conditional logic that allows us to control when this field shows up. And I'm going to show an example of this in a moment once I've added some more fields to the form. Okay, let's go ahead and add an email address. Make it required. Okay, now let's go ahead and do something kind of cool. Let's put this into a grid. So we're gonna start out with the top section is gonna be your name and email, and then we're gonna go into a 2-column layout. So we're gonna add a new row, which is right here. And now we have this button right here, which is not super intuitive, but as soon as you figure out what it does, it's really cool. Click it, and it splits it into two rows, or into 2 columns. So now we can add fields to each of these individual columns. So let's add a checkbox. Actually, yeah, the checkbox is fine. Let's just say happy. Were you happy? And now we can actually add multiple options. Or here, let's change this up. Okay, so now we have 3 options people can choose from. You did great, okay, or not very good. And now if we want, we can also separate these out so there's a value and a label. We're gonna just keep the labels and the values the same. We can drag and drop them into the order that we want. And you notice that as we do this, everything updates over here on the left anytime that we make changes over here. Okay, so now let's go ahead and add another section. Let's add a drop-down select. And now here, let's just so let's just give them a yes, no option. Yes, no, we're gonna set this as the default. And okay, now let's go over here and we can add more options. So let's just add a paragraph text. Okay, and we can go ahead and we can set it up so it's say 8 rows, and you notice that it grew in length. Let's update. Now let's go ahead and just preview this and see how we're doing. So now you can see we've got our first 2 fields, and then we have our columns right here. And you can see the whole thing is really nicely responsive. And then once we get down here, everything drops into a single column as we would expect. And let me shrink my browser back down to the size of the video. Okay, so now let's go back and let's add some more. So now what's cool is we can go ahead and add a page. So we can have a multi-page form here. And let's just add this. Let's say we're just going to add some fields here that we don't really care about just to show you more examples. Let's just say company name. And now let's add a file uploader. And these are all going to be optional. And let's go ahead and let's add a button. Now here, this is one thing that took me a moment to figure out, but once I did, it was very clear. So we have multiple pages here, and we have button elements. Now this button can be a lot of different things, the button type. So it can be a submit button, which would actually submit the form, or it could be next page, previous page, or reset. So let's just make this previous page. Now let's go back over here to page 1, And let's add a new row. And let's add a button to it. And here it is. Let's change this to next page. So now we're giving them the ability to navigate between the pages. And now over here on page 2, let's go ahead and add a submit button. So we're going to do that by clicking this, go to button, and let's make it a submit survey. Now let's do a conditional here. So let's actually add one more element, or actually here, let's add a row. And now let's move our submit button down here. Let's add an element, and let's make this a radio. Let's make it a checkbox. And we're going to make this a terms of agreement. Agree to our terms. Okay. And now let's move this above that. And now let's make our submit button. We're gonna make it we're gonna give it some conditional logic here. So we're going to make it so it only shows if the terms of agreement is checked. So now we can say we want it to show, or actually here, let's disable it, add conditional group, if terms is not checked. There we go. I think that works. We'll find out in a moment. Okay, let's go on update. Let's go to the preview. Fill that out. I was really happy. Would I recommend? Yes. You did great. Let's go to the next page. Company name, Pippin's pages. In this case, we're not going to worry about a file, but now you can, okay, there we go. So submit survey is disabled. Oh, and looks like I need to actually add in a value for our checkbox. So let's go back and do that. So we'll go here, click on the pencil. I'm not actually sure what the inline option does, but we're going to find out. We're going to add a value. Yes, I agree. We're going to update. And now we're going to go preview. So let's fill this back out again. Did great. Go next. Yes, I agree. And looks like we're going to, oh, we need to go back and change this. We need to fix our conditional over here. So we're going to now say disable it if it is not yes, I agree. There we go. Refresh this over here. Yes, I agree. And now we can submit the survey. And there we go. Form has been submitted successfully. Okay, so that's how it looks. And now there's a couple other options that I want to show you in this. So first of all, you can name your pages. You can also, so for example, if we want to say part 1, part 2, go back to preview. Oh, and now if we show the breadcrumbs, now you can see part 1 and part 2 up here, which is cool. So it gives you a kind of idea of navigation through the forms. Now, processors is really pretty cool. So we can add a processor. Let's say we want to send an autoresponder. So anytime the form is submitted, we want to automatically send them an email. So we can say use a processor, and then we can set up the options for what we want to send them. And we can do this conditionally as well. So we can say if particular field, so use this if if they're not good, let's send them an email to see if we can get additional feedback from them, because we want to try and figure out why they weren't happy. And you can add multiple emails. You can add as many autoresponders as you want. You can also set up redirects. So the redirect is going to be used after the form is submitted. So over here, after I submitted the form, it just showed me a message that says, thank you, form was submitted. But if we wanted, we could actually redirect them to a different page, to any page we want. It could be a success page, it could be a thank you page, anything we want. And again, we can use the same conditions. We can say we want to use this if they were super happy. We know that they're really happy with us. So let's go ahead and send them to a page that tells them about other things that we can offer them or something like that. Now we also have variables. And the variables are pretty cool. Basically, these are values that are going to be passed in with the redirect. So let's say that I want to say name. And now I'm going to go in here and I'm going to grab the value of the your name field. Set it as a passback, and you can add all these different ones. So these are really going to be for people that are trying to do kind of capture some of that data once they get to the page. There's a lot of different things you can do with it. We won't go much further than that. Now, you can also have responsive sections. So over here, you can see that this is pretty well responsive. It works really, really nicely. Well, they have a couple options. So you can set the smallest screen size where it collapses. Or you can maintain a grid always. So right now, if we get less than 797 pixels, I think, we collapse down into a single column. So now we have a grid, now we don't. We can also go in and set up a mailer, and this is basically the notifications that you are going to get by default whenever a submission is sent. And so you can set the email address it's going to send to. You can set the type of email. You can include a CSV file that has all of the data. You can also add it to. You can add multiple emails, and you can also set up the email exactly how you want here. And every single field that is built into the form can be used here using these placeholders. So for example, we had a field called your name. So if we wanted to include that field, it would be your name like that. Okay, now there's also just a general settings section, which is pretty simple, but nice. You can enable Ajax. You can remove the form after submission. You can do a couple of different things. Now, let's go look at how you want to see the entries. So after you've built the form, you want to be able to see the data that's been submitted to it. So first of all, we have our list of forms, and we can simply click on entries. And now we can see the data right here. We can click view, and they're going to show us all of the information that was submitted through that form. If we want, we can throw it away. We can see this in the trash. If we want, we can go ahead and restore it. We can export the entries to a CSV file. And now there's one other thing that at first I was a little off-put by, but once I kind of played around with it a little bit more, I actually realized that it was really cool. So I saw these three buttons up here, alert, form, and grid, and I didn't really know what they did. So I clicked them, see what would happen. And what it turns out is it's actually for enabling or disabling specific styles on the form. So let's say that we want to do all of our own CSS. Simply check that to disable it, or uncheck it in this case. And now all of the CSS for the form has been removed. The grid is still there, so the form is still responsive, but all of the general styling has been removed. So now we can add that back on, disable the grid, refresh, and now we have the styling, but we don't have a grid. The reason I was off put by this a little bit is because these were just kind of buttons put up at the top of the screen, and I wasn't entirely sure what they did. But what's actually really cool here is that they've completely removed the need for a settings page. And the only reason I was off put by this was because it was different. It was not something I was accustomed to seeing. This is not the way that I'm used to disabling CSS. But after I played with it, I realized, actually, I think it's really, really good. They've done something differently, and they've done it in a way that works really, really well. And that's one of the things I think one of my favorite aspects of Caldera so far is that they've managed to maintain a lot of the WordPress UI in that all of their buttons and such use the same WordPress UI style that we're accustomed to. They have the general all of the colors, the etc. are all following the WordPress UI standards. But they've still re-envisioned the way that things work. They've re-envisioned the layout. They've re-envisioned whether or not we have a settings page or how things are displayed. And that's pretty cool. I think it works really, really well. So far, overall, I was really, really pleased with how this works. I really like the layout builder aspect of the form. I like how reliable it is. I will say that I think they have one of probably the most reliable front-end displays I've seen so far. Now, to be fair, I've only tested it on 2015, so I can't say for sure. 2015 is usually a pretty good theme to work with. But if you start putting it onto other themes, I don't know how things are going to behave. But so far, it's excellent. I love the layout builder aspect where you can really control the different columns. Usually I don't like layout builders, but when it comes to a form and you want to build a really complex form, being able to say I want these fields in a row, these fields into 3 different columns or 2 columns is really, really powerful. So overall, I really, really like it. You can find them at calderawp.com, and they have some add-ons there that they've released, and I believe they've got several more in development. So if you want to take payments through PayPal or Stripe, or you want to register and log users in, or you want to send users to MailChimp, go check them out. They're available there. The plugin is free to download on WordPress.org. Definitely recommend playing with it and giving it a shot. If you have other form builder plugins that you use and you tend to use them over and over again, step out of your comfort zone and try something new. You might be surprised. It's really cool. So I would definitely give it a solid 5 stars.